Hello, Eva, and welcome back again.
Hi, Alina. Nice to see you.
We ended our last conversation with the topic of community, and we made a promise that we will continue discussing about this topic in more detail during our next conversation. So here we are with this very interesting topic about community, and especially during these times when we need to conduct our daily routines in a more private space than probably ever before. So I would ask you, what do you think is the main trait of a community? What do you think that makes a community be a community?
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I find it really timely, and I find it as important as it is maybe also challenging to answer. To me, community is marked by the fulfillment of the need of a sense of belonging. I belong to a certain group of people that are gathering around, I want to say, a common thread of connection. So to me, community, for example, if I go into my professional field, there is a community that I was interested in creating, in nurturing, and in opening in my area in the coaching field. For example, I'm one of the co-trainers and collaborative partners of two of my teachers, Robert Dills and Stephen Gilligan. And in participating in the education, I always, probably about a decade ago, I always had an interest to keep the thread of connection going, and I wanted to build a community. And to me, part of that was to have a space that is safe where people can come and gather, to create a space where we have a common interest, which is we all have been educated in a similar education, which in that case was generative trance work and generative coaching work. Then I also gave that space a gathering with a shared interest. So every time when we came together, I was asking people, what is your interest in coming? What are you hoping to get out of this gathering, out of this community? So to have the day, or however long we were connecting, being guided by the intentions of the people coming together. What I noticed when I think about the sense of belonging, what was really important for me was that there was a shared space where everybody felt equally be welcomed, equally be seen, equally be validated, and equally be part of the negotiation processes of how we created the day. So it wasn't, I was kind of the host. I was inviting and I was hosting the community. But I also said, here's my home. I'm happy to open it. And I've been really educated in the work, so I'm happy to support in whatever way through the work. But I like to open a space that will equally meet each other's needs in coming, because it's a valuable space and time. But we also had sort of a frame so that it's not just whatever coming together, but we also had a little bit of a framing, meaning I said, I'm opening my door, we have breakfast together, there's a little bit of chit-chatting, and then let's formally sit down in a circle, so that we created a form to then ask for each other's intentions for the day. And then I was guiding a little meditation to ground and center at the very beginning. And then from there, kind of the day took off, and we had a beginning time and we had an ending time. So there's also enough of a frame that gave safety and kind of a, I guess, a way of knowing how long is the day, where do we focus our attention in a certain direction, but also giving enough breathing space so that every need and every interest could have a space in that as well. And to me, that would be an example of creating a community.
Mm-hmm. So it's a space where people feel like they are belonging to some form of group, or some sort of a gathering of common values, of common interests. And also they feel the freedom to express themselves and be aligned with their own expressions and the expression of the community values. So to me, hearing you saying this is like a blending of the two models that you were presenting in a previous podcast that we had, the hierarchical model and the seed model.
Yeah.
So there are some guidelines, let's say, some sort of rules that are set into place and acknowledged from the beginning, but there's also a lot of flexibility and of freedom of creating and changing along the way those guidelines. If I am understanding correctly what
Yeah, I think that's accurate, and I find that is quite an interesting balance between the two. Like, I see it as, I think in a community it's good to have a certain skin that is creating a nice breathing boundary around that community, so that you have a container where everybody feels welcomed and a sense of belonging, but also kind of a trusting and a safety and something that you can also rely on there, so that there are certain other needs met, and at the same time that it's spacious and open enough so that you don't feel the need, I have to fit in, which would be a confusion that to me sometimes takes place in spaces that we call so-called communities. I think sometimes there's a confusion between a sense of belonging or a sense of fitting in. And to me, I don't want people to feel the need of fitting in. I want people to really feel uniquely themselves, allowed to bring uniquely them through this gathering, this coming together, and at the same time having a shared body. Let's say, to me, a community is almost like a group body. It's a group spirit, it's a group body that gets created by a common interest and a common values and common beliefs. So for example, my beliefs that are the underbelly of those gatherings are guided by Virginia Satir's beliefs, because that's the body of work that I represent, not just in my professional work, but also those are kind of guidelines that I lead my life. So for example, one of them is, in sameness we connect, in differences we grow. So I do try to open a possibility that there are differences being honored, and finding ways to really listen to each other in a way that differences can evoke a new sense of understanding, new sense of growth. Another one is that we're all unique beings, and we all share a body, and that we're all manifestation of unique energy, life force, and at the same time the same universal life force. So for me, there's also a guideline that I want to honor, that on one level we're all interbeings. When we come together, it becomes pretty evident quickly that whatever experience I have, everybody else has in the room. but the way I may uniquely experience it in my own story, in my own in my own way, that may be my particular story, but the core experiences, they're all the same. And I'm really trying to nurture those truths and those beliefs when we come together as a group, and then have some really practical experience that brings us close, that where we have a way of feeling enriched every time we get outside of the door again and say goodbye until we meet back again, that everybody takes something out of it and says, I'm happy I was there. I feel more of myself as I leave this community. And I have a sense of belonging. Even I'm leaving to go home to my family or wherever I go, I still feel I will continue to stay part of that community. So it's also a continuous welcoming. I usually keep saying to people, here's a certain time frame, but if you have a need to leave earlier, feel free to do so. And please leave without guilt and know that you can come back anytime, because everybody has a life and everybody has to make their right balancing decision. And those are some of the things that I find really important to also support in the community, that there's not a rigid rule about either way I'm part of it or I'm not part of it. There's an inner group, there's an outer group, but kind of like saying, I can come, I can leave, I can come back. So there's breathing space. And there's also some commitment. There's also some reliability on being willing to do your commitments to stay reliable in the community. I think that's an important piece as well.
Yeah, when listening to you, an image of a car in traffic came to me when you were speaking about reliability. So when engaging in traffic, we need to be aware that there are some rules put into place so that we don't bump into each other at each step of the way. And also we need to signal that the other participants when we want to change course or change the road. So we need to signal through lights, or whether it's red or yellow or green, what we want to do and what we need to do. So it's like being part of the whole traffic, but also take responsibility and letting the other ones know about our intentions. So.
Yeah, totally. And you know, I like to make the differentiation between guidelines or orientation guidelines and rules, rigid rules. You know, sometimes when we have too rigid rules, people try to fit in. So they try to obey certain rules, and that's not very helpful. But having guidelines in play, because it's a collaborative space of many unique beings coming together, that's helpful so that everybody has their needs met. For example, you know, when I say come for our gathering at 9 o'clock, and then we have probably about an hour of gathering to, you know, socialize, to interact, to have an open space, moving around, and then I also serve some breakfast. 10 o'clock, we would like to start in the circle. Then one guideline for us would be, you can come anytime you desire to come. And please notice that when you choose to come at 10 o'clock and we sit in a circle, that's not the right time for you to then go into the kitchen and have breakfast, because that was the 9 to 10 o'clock kind of a thing. You know, and maybe you want to wait till we have the next break. But, or at the same time, let's say when, you know, somebody comes in a little bit later, maybe at 9:30, that's still time to mix and mingle, and that there's no need to feel big apologies about being too late, but just kind of like, okay, I'm coming at my own time, because this is kind of the arrival time span, and it's okay to come at 9 sharp or at 9:30. And here's still breakfast time, but this time it will only be 30 minutes, because then we would like to begin in a circle. And everybody has kind of an agreement, what are the different phases. And I think that's to be really helpful, so that you honor certain, some people are more flexible, some people like structure a little bit better, to find a common ground so that everybody feels honored in their own needs. I find that really important. But it would be very different from me if I would say, I usually start at 9, at 10 o'clock we do our circle, and then somebody comes 9:15, and I open the door and I feel like, oh, you're late. It has an opinion. And then people may get like a judgment. That to me doesn't feel like a welcoming space. That would feel more of a very judgmental way of doing it. And so for me, community also needs, when I am in charge of it, a certain breathing space that allows some flexibility for different possibilities.
Yeah, and as the words origin is having something in common. So for a community to be able to exist and develop, the common grounds need to be solid enough for everyone, and the differences need to be some sort of a creative ingredients, because at least in my opinion, if it's the other way around, so if it's more focused on the differences than on the common grounds, then the potential for that community to be just a gathering of individuals with not much in common is relatively high.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I've been actually experimenting a little bit with communities. I began years back with just the genitive trans community, and I stayed within that boundary. Then I was also supporting genitive coaching work, and then I had the daring idea, I blend those two groups together and see how that works, which is interesting. So we had people who had done genitive trans work and genitive coaching, which has a common spirit, common ground, and there's some differences. But I thought maybe it's a common ground enough so that it's worthwhile bringing different people from different communities together and see how that enriches. And it worked out really, really well. And then I was a little bit more daring, and I brought my Virginia Satir community, people who I have educated in the family systems work in Satir, which is also in the spirit of the work and the grounding underbelly belief set. It's very similar. So I thought that could be also another fit. So I had Satir people meeting genitive coaching, meeting genitive trans, and putting all of those together in one community gathering. And again, we realized, and I think it was a little bit surprising, we have such a common understanding about beliefs and the work and why we gather, that it actually worked out really nice. And it was the underlying connection that allowed a very intimate, positive coming together to take place. But there was also this element of surprise, like, wow, that's kind of interesting. We have not shared the same classroom, yet I do feel very close to you now that you're in the same room with me. So there was also this very interesting possibility to open to a wider group of people to be welcomed in the same space, and finding how many points of connection we did actually find. And there were people who said, I feel like I've known you a lot longer. We just met. So how did that just happen? And I think it was the shared common ground that really allowed those surprising, delicious moment of really nice connections. And out of that already grew, business partnerships, friendships, and people who are really looking forward to see each other, once a year or twice a year or whatever again, which is really nice. And it was seeds planted and then watered into a very nurturing environment that allowed that to blossom.
What do you think would be some of the ingredients that would make a community be a supportive space for individuals in which they could grow and develop beyond fulfilling that need of belonging? So much more into expressing their authenticity. How would a community or what would need a community in order to do that?
I think you definitely need a welcoming space. You need, and it doesn't have to be a physical space. I mean, I used to like to open and design my space in a way that would demonstrate with every outside symbol, you are welcome. For example, having already plates out and having some nice, delicious food out and having, tea and coffee ready, so that it just looked like hospitality. I've waited for you. You're welcome. I've been preparing this house for you. So some part of a way, especially now when we're meeting in the virtual room, some of the community gatherings are now happening in the virtual room. So I think it's worthwhile to look. So for example, I was having a gathering with my Satir community, and it was also bringing two communities together. And I began the gathering with the song, You Got a Friend. So I was inviting the music that I have a very strong connection to. And I knew a number of people had a connection to that song through me. So I was already beginning to weave a patterning through some music piece that would allow to give us a welcoming space. And so basically we started to get into rhythm. People sang along. We very naturally, we started to create kind of a shared, not a dance, but a rhythm together. And that was already allowing to harmonize everybody sitting in their own space, but feeling more and more connected as a group. So the context that is sending out some nurturing message, auditorial or nutrition food, or now it's different, but it used to be before that everybody was hugging each other as a beginning ritual, like a warm hug of saying hello, you're welcome, I feel you, I connect with you. So context and those warm messages, I think, are really, really important. Invitation, to send out an invitation that kind of sends out the message, I've been preparing myself, and you matter. Like whatever message sends out, you do matter for me. And it usually is the simple, small little things that are having these impacts. I usually read a little story that will maybe see the theme of the day, that will have the underlined message of connection and differences. And I guess my emotional when I'm the host, I know that my emotional state and letting people know that I've been really looking forward to see them again has a ripple to you are really welcome. And I think that to me is probably the most important word, which means welcome. The quality of welcoming, the quality of listening. What brought you here? Why did you spend this precious time? Why are you gifting yourself with your precious presence and time? And let me listen to that. And I would actually be curious, because you have been to some of the gathering, what were the elements for you that you felt that makes a
First of all, for me personally, it was the context that was created. So I resonated very much with the context and how it was framed. And I think that made a huge difference in how things were unfolding throughout the whole experience. Mm-hmm. So that first reference of the setting was really very, very important, because I personally think that if that reference is not very clearly stated or intended, it gives room to a lot of maybe too much flexibility. So and that in my opinion leads to a lot of confusion, because each individual understands what he or she pleases out of the structure that is too flexible. And giving very few hints, but very clearly, I think it's really, really important. Not very rigid rules, but some very clear guidelines. And okay, nobody is punished if they do otherwise, but just to have a clear reference of how we were intending to go through the experience, I think it's really valuable. And that clear expression allows for people to be able to sense for themselves when they go beyond that reference or not. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to come back again and say, okay, I stated that at the beginning because it was clear enough so that they would remind it, or they would remember it from the first time. So that was, and also the quality of authenticity. I mean, the statement of truth, I think, allows for other people to be able to connect to that space within themselves that allows them to express more freely and more in connection with their true nature.
Yeah.
Because I sensed that in environments like this, we have the ability or the opportunity to train ourselves to show up more and to be more in connection with ourselves throughout the whole time, not just in that specific context. And maybe that's the most valuable thing that the workshop can do, beyond any, I don't know, techniques or other things. It's that experience of being able to connect and to express.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. To, you know, I guess what arrives as, I mean, you know, because the message intended is not necessarily what the message is that has been received. You know, you can have many ideas, but then maybe there's a different message that comes across. And I guess for myself, I was always kind of sitting with, very intentional with this question: how can we create a community context that will allow enough of a boundary to create a safety and reliability and purpose to why are we doing what we're doing, so that it's very clear and at the same time not being rigid, so that there's some fluid flow and flexibility, that as many people feel a sense of belonging in the same space, because every person is individual, is unique, is different. And I did wanted to create a very wide span of holding as much of a space wide enough that will allow as many people as possible to feel a sense of belonging and feel a sense of welcoming, and at the same time have that a really good container that we could really feel safe in it as well. Because I think that those are the opposites you hold the safety and reliability, and you hold the flexibility and the openness for as many possibilities in it. And it's usually the framing ingredients. Virginia Satir liked to say that you need to create a context that will best reflect back in the environment what you're hoping for people to experience then in this context. So having an environment that will actually mirror, that will show all the different messages that you're hoping people will experience throughout the experience, so that it's already that nice reflection in the environment. And that was always my guiding principle in creating community spaces and creating gatherings and having all these different ideas about how are we doing it and what are the little details that I put in play in order to send out those messages.
Yeah, and bringing people together and allowing them to connect to these kinds of experiences allows them at the same time to connect with others in a sense of belonging to a larger community, and also go within themselves a lot more. And one of the paradoxical things that happen with those guidelines that are flexible, so the more freedom is given, actually what I noticed is that the more they have the possibility to choose from many options, people tend to stick to very few options. So it's a it's a very interesting paradox, that the tendency is to disregard or to rebel against one strict rule, but when presented with many options, just stick to very few.
Yeah, you know, it's a sentence that was accompanied me in my teenage years is coming back to me, where I learned through a friend: if you love something, set it free. If it comes back to you, it's yours. If not, it was never meant to be. And you know, I'm sometimes guided by this principle that I'm opening with all my heart and with all my belief and all my being, a loving, nurturing space for everybody to be welcome. Whoever chooses to come, welcome. Whoever chooses not to come this time, but maybe next time, is welcome too. Whoever chooses to stay away, that's fine, but still welcome in my heart. And I have to admit, there are moments when I'm hoping, like, oh, I hope somebody shows up, and there's a little bit anxious part of me that's like, if nobody's coming, if it's too much of an open space, if nobody's coming, what am I going to do with that? And then I get so excited when I see how many people feel the commitment. I give you an example. I always lately have gathered these online dance sessions. I'm doing a practice that's called Somatic Movement Integration Process, where I open a space to a larger community that I blend from all kinds of places from the world. And I'm offering a somatic process. I'm offering a movement process where we can connect as a community in movement, And usually the beginning is at 8 o'clock, and then I begin with a little bit of hello, where you're from, just say your name and where the location, so that we can put the world together. And then I give a little bit of an introduction how I'm doing this and why I'm doing this. And then we begin with the movement practice. And then at the very end, we just say maybe one word to finish, or just kind of a little closing. Sometimes I do a closing dance. And every time there's a little anxious part that is feeling, oh my God, I hope somebody shows up. And then I get very excited to see, some people keep repeating every day, every time they come. Some people are coming new. So there's also this flexibility. And I hear so many times, Eva, I wanted to come so many times. And then there were other things coming in the way. And it was so delightful to know that I was continuously welcome. So I felt free this time to come on board. And I love that. I love that there's a flow of people feeling, I am continuously feeling welcomed. And usually that makes the magic, because I believe the people who come together in the moment in time are the magical people who have to come together. And then we can choose to make the most out of that. So set them free, have a clear boundary, have a welcoming space that is nurturing and reflecting back the teachings. And that will bring the perfect match of people together to create some magic, what it means to be a nice community with a sense of belonging rather than fitting in.
Yeah, and that may also be a practice of making some choices, some grown-up choices, when we know that we can either do that or that or that, but we choose to do that specific thing at a certain clear moment.
Yes, true. I committed myself to support grown-ups to make a clear choice rather than being the mother for little children that keep pleasing the mother or father or whoever. I really like to create an open space for grown-ups to know I'm in the right place right now and I feel welcome.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful for you doing that and opening these kind of spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for acknowledging that. Really appreciate it.